Hello and welcome to this episode of Dynamics Update. It's been a while since we did one of those release notes episodes, but now it's time for the Wave release. And with me, as usual, I have Gustav Sundblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan, my old friend. How are you?
Hi. I'm a bit tired. It's that part of the year where everything is dark and snowy and cold and yeah. So I hopefully we will have a nice podcast recording at least. So that's.
I had a colleague. Yeah, I had a colleague at work, a friend who asked me. He's from US, I think, based on his dialect at least. He said, "Are you immune to the dark, Gustav? Because you look so happy." And maybe you get kind of immune to the dark, being in Sweden for an extended period of time. I'm not sure, but yeah, it can be a quite dark period here in Sweden. But everything is actually getting lighter every day, Johan. So you can look positive on things as well.
I took a morning walk this morning, and it was actually light outside. So that's good. That's good. So.
Exactly. And you should feel happy because you get to read through all the release wave documentation and all the release notes now. So
that's a plus. That's something that is happy, right? Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is that what we realized was that it's a bit fuzzy between the 10.0.43 release and the wave release. So in this episode, we will actually take on both of them at the same time.
Yeah, we'll try to group them, right? So we can do the 43, the ones that are listed under 43 release at least first, and then some of those they are also, of course, in the release wave documentation. So, and a good note there is that we won't cover everything because it's a lot. So make sure we'll maybe put it in the show notes as well. Make sure to download the release wave documentation specifically. There's a nice PDF that you can download, absolutely not print for environmental reasons, but you can download it to whatever reader you have.
Yes.
And work with that.
Yep. So I'll let you start this time.
Great. And the avid listener will notice that we usually start with the financial ones because they are listed at the top when you go to the what's new and start reading up on the material. So there's no favorite here, but one coming in finance is the enablement of process automation for accounts receivable, specifically the foreign currency revaluation. And I'm a bit out of my depth when it comes to financial processes here, but I know some of them. I know this one is something that happens on a recurring basis because, currency exchange rates change, especially now the last couple of years. So it's a process that everyone does. And it made me think about process automation as a functionality within Dynamics. I haven't really used it that much, but apparently, maybe you know more, Johan, but apparently it can be used to schedule and automate specific tasks, kind of like a batch job, and it is basically a batch job, but it's more pointed towards end users because you can see a schedule and you can plan and you can maybe approve it and so forth. So I'm going to read up on that specific part as well. What's coming in 43 is the possibility to use the foreign currency revaluation. Anything you can automate in like a workable fashion makes a lot of sense. That's the whole point of running an intelligent ERP such as Dynamics 365. So make sure to actually make use of those process automations that are there in the system. I know I will read up a little bit more on it to know how it works.
Yes, that's good. So my first one is actually, according to me at least, a really big one. It has to do with security governance because I've been discussing this a lot with my colleagues in different rollout projects that I've been in. How do we manage security roles in F&O? And there are basically two ways. You can do it from the UI and you can do it from code. So you can ask someone that codes X++ to check them into the repository and deploy them that way. In AX 2012, there was actually a way to build them from the UI and then import them into the AOT and thus get them into X++ code, which was really, really nice. There are ways of doing this still. It's a bit more tricky and you need to rely on external tools to do this. But the reason why I haven't liked the UI approach is because it's a bit hard to understand what has been done. It's a bit hard to understand what has been changed since the last time. So what's coming in security governance is actually, first of all, version management of security configuration. So when you change security configuration, you will get a new version, so you can roll back to the old version if something goes wrong and so on. You also get an audit trail, which is really, really good, because that means that no one can just, I mean, you have had a security, you have had requirement of security in order to set the security rules before, which meant that you could lock them down so that no one could change them. But if someone had access to changing them, you didn't really know exactly what was changed. So you don't know exactly what someone fiddled with in order to get it not to work. So on top of the version control, we will also get audit trails for the security roles. We will get license auditing, which is also really, really good, because the licensing reports in F&O previously has not been amazing. There was room for improvement.
That's the meeting you always dread in any implementation project. We have to talk about licenses. We have to estimate. That's like, that's fun. It's really, really tricky. So, yeah. But it has to be done, right? So there's a number of range of tools to do it. So I also saw this one. It looks super interesting from compliance and like giving the tools to the correct people. Because as you say, Johan, previously, at least it's been a bit of a gray area with security roles. It ends up being like a technical thing. It shouldn't really be a technical thing. It should be a functional compliance, people who know these things and understand these things. And then, of course, it's menu items and privileges and duties and stuff like that. But the whole work with assigning, maintaining, ensuring from a security standpoint shouldn't fall into the hands of a developer. They should just develop according to best practice, and the rest should be up to someone else.
But I sort of agree with you. But on the other hand, I still think that deploying the security roles should be part of deploying the code. So if we could have it built by someone who understands the business processes and maintained by someone who knows how to maintain code, because right now what we get is one way to maintain code and a completely different way to maintain security settings.
No, I mean, that's a dream scenario, right? To have deploy security as code. So you have it's same as deploying config as code, which is also a kind of a dream scenario. So we can go on and on about that. Maybe we should have separate. That's a good podcast topic to figure out how to get to that point, which everyone's been dreaming about for so long.
Yep. How we would like to have it, how it's supposed to work.
Episode.
Yep.
Let's call some of our friends at Microsoft and say, okay, this is how we would like it. Can you make that happen?
Can you please just fix the shit?
Make it happen.
Yeah.
Like kind of circumvent the ideas portal here. We'll just make a highway into Microsoft.
Yep.
Hopefully. No, but it's a really cool feature, right? And I think it's being enabled. It's a preview, right? In 43.
Yes, it's a preview.
So worth looking into. So speaking of preview, another preview is the, and this is just a minor detail, but it's for all the Copilot summaries, or all the Copilot interaction out there. This is called enhanced user feedback, and basically what it is, it's like buttons on the Copilot summary screens and an ability to provide actual like written feedback. And it all goes to Microsoft, of course, and it makes a lot of sense because the whole point with AI and building something useful is having access to telemetry and data so you can actually use these models to provide gains. But it's interesting when these Copilot things are enabled, at least the summaries and on those things that, well, they can't really destroy anything. They can just help you, and they're great. But they are automatically enabled, so you need to be mindful of it, because at least I have gotten at least a couple of questions from users and in ALM, like maintenance cycles. Okay, I just saw this screen here. Does it do anything? So if you instead like inform your users before you actually roll out the version, you say, this will happen. You will get this button. Don't worry about it. Use it. It's great to provide feedback. So it's good knowing about all these things that are automatically enabled in the system. So yeah, that was my opinion on that one.
Yes. Okay. So my next one is actually connected to electronic reporting. I was at the customers a couple of years back where I actually got to try out a lot of the features in electronic reporting, and I realized exactly what it's supposed to do, sort of. Because I mean, it's a document framework, but it's a lot more than a document framework because it also connects to endpoints, sends documents, signs documents. So it's a lot more than just creating documents. And one of the ones that actually takes advantage of this is when you send in your VATs for the UK, because they have a complete portal with connecting to Dynamics and everything. And also the reason why I picked this one as well is because I just saw something I haven't seen before. It's called security enhancements in UK. Make taxes digital, VAT integration. But before the title, it actually says production ready preview. And that's something I haven't seen before. We usually
The
say
Microsoft statements, yeah.
Yes, we usually say to everyone, stay away from previews.
In production, yeah.
Yeah, because previews is bad, not good. So
interesting. I didn't see that one. Production ready preview.
Yeah, and it's also to make it even worse. It also says at the end, after this feature has been enabled, it can't be disabled.
Ooh,
so
scary.
What I'm guessing here is that in order to get it working, you need to first enable the feature and then you need to do configurations. So you can actually probably roll it back, not uninstall the feature, but you can roll everything else back. Yep. To get rid of it if it doesn't work correctly. And also I'm guessing that it's probably a feature that isn't that high risk to use in that case.
Well, reporting VAT to the government doesn't sound like low risk, but I mean, be mindful of how you do this. Just to be sure, I wouldn't dare go into the VAT reporting framework in the UK without being at least pretty sure about how.
Yeah. So what they say here is that the following actions of the web service type has been changed to executable classes: retrieving VAT obligations, retrieve VAT obligations, submit VAT returns, and a couple of other ones. So. Okay. It actually sounds like they have done some refactoring of the applications in this case. So okay. I would say that it's probably safe to use.
Yeah, probably is more like these performance enhancements that come as features and then they become on by default and then they become mandatory. It's kind of a way to phase out old code basically to force everyone to move into the improved code.
Yes.
Because otherwise, as you are well aware, if you just give the users options, you can enable it if you want. I wouldn't say a majority, but at least a lot of users will just no, never.
Yep.
So you kind of need to force them.
Yes.
What I expect.
Yep. All right. So your next one.
Cool. My next one is I'll take both at the same time because one is for the ATP. It's for available to promise. It's something when we supply chain, you say that, okay, I don't have this on hand right now, but according to my requested or my confirmed delivery dates, I will get my own hand in 7 days. So it's a measure that you can use for calculating ATP and for your planning, basically. So the first feature is introducing a parameter to consider reserved on-hand quantity as unavailable for ATP. And it makes sense because if you say that something is coming in, but it is actually reserved, it's not really available to promise, right? Because it's already been promised away to someone else. So it's a parameter that you can use. You should depends on your scenario, of course. It depends on what you're reserving. Maybe you're reserving it to make it available. So it makes sense to have it as a parameter. It's introduced under AR, and then you can just set the ATP exclude reserved on or off, basically. But then in the inventory visibility integration, which is the external microservice that can also use ATP, looking at pretty much the same things. They look at what's coming in using purchase orders or transfer orders, and you get this whole range of dates in the REST API. You ask for a product with ATP, you get what's on hand right now, but you also get the configurable range of dates where it kind of gives you, okay, when it's coming into stock. It doesn't give you like PO details, it just gives you on-hand data. So it's really nice. It was unclear. What's new here is that that functionality with visibility becomes GA as part of this release. And I'm not sure if these two are connected. I don't think so. I need to look into that, but worth looking into. Otherwise, in visibility, you basically, you build your measures, right? So you can pretty much decide what you should treat as available to promise or not. So you can say that the ATP measure in visibility should include what is reserved as well or not. So I think you could pretty much already do that in visibility if you configure your measurements that way. So maybe the feature doesn't impact that functionality, but worth looking into. So actually 2 ATP features. One is for visibility and one is the built-in one, basically, where you can exclude what has been reserved already.
Yes. Okay, so my next one, as I've mentioned a couple of times before, I've done a lot of dual write work over the last month.
You say that as if it's a bad thing.
Yes. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's a bit frustrating sometimes.
It's a learning curve.
Right? Yes, it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. The reason I get them is because no one else wants them, and everyone else thinks that dual write is dysfunctional. I would say that it's just misunderstood, but that's I'm like I still trust in dual write, and that's why I bring up this feature as well. We will get a couple of new mappings in 10.0.43, meaning that we can actually handle return order invoices using dual write.
And that's really cool. A lot of effort goes into dual write, and I really like dual write as well. It's just, it needs you need to understand it before you. It's not an on or off switch, right? You need to understand the basics of that framework to really make good use of it. But when you make good use of it, you can actually do a lot of cool stuff.
And there are really many dependencies, which means that things. Things are very much dependent on each other, and you need to get everything working in order to get it working completely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun because we say just enable dual write. It's like this massive amount of complexity in the data model on one side, and on both sides really. But it's really important to understand that you're trying to combine two kind of separate applications with the flick of a switch, and let's just dual write it. But it's really complicated, right?
It's like saying just use BizTalk.
Yeah, exactly. Just do it.
It's okay. Just use BizTalk. It's okay.
Yeah, just throw X amount of development hours into BizTalk, and then you're done.
Yeah. No a developer. It's just next, finish, and then you're done.
Yeah, and you're right. It's next, finish, but not in BizTalk. No,
right.
We're joking. So, so my next one, it's not dual write. Safe to say. I actually, we rarely talk about human resources, and I'm not sure if it's a regional thing that it's not used as much in Sweden, Nordics, because you normally have another payroll system because of all the local regulatory demands. But everyone needs a worker rec ID. Everyone needs to be an employee in the system. There's a lot of functionality tied to the HR model, even if you don't use it entirely. So I always read through the release notes, but I rarely find something worth mentioning, from this technical standpoint. But there was one here, which is a feature where you can disable the assignment of duplicate identification numbers. And basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. The employee number is not a primary key or unique key in the worker table, is what I imagine. I didn't really look that up, but I'm pretty sure. So it's the worker rec ID, right? So this feature will allow you to avoid having duplicate personnel numbers or identification numbers assigned to employees. So it will help you reduce inconsistencies. So it's apparent. I'm guessing it's someone reported it as an error, and then it came in as a feature because there might be cases where you want to have personnel numbers being the same for reasons.
Yep. So I tend to just bring up the boring ones, but I think the boring ones are the important ones. And keeping your environment lean and mean and performant means that you need to do some cleaning once in a while. And one of the things that end up in 10.0.43 is that we have support for cleaning up work exception logs. So we've had a lot of cleanup jobs in F&O previously. Microsoft built a new cleanup job, and they say this is how you are supposed to clean up this entity or this table or whatever. And in this case, it has to do with exception logs. So there is a new cleanup job for exception logs.
Very nice. Everything that you can clean up and get rid of in the database is something you should absolutely spend time doing, especially now with the license costs but just for performance. And as you say, lean, mean machine. It's a good thing to strive for when it comes to Dynamics.
Yes, and I mean, since we aren't fully into the archiving and long-term retention yet, keeping track of all of those system tables and logs and stuff is a really good thing to do. Because we need to keep the storage down at least. So
absolutely. And speaking of lean, maybe not mean, but very lean, there seems to have been a lot of work from the POS development or the store commerce development team, and a lot of investment into the offline capabilities. So I have not one, but not two, but 5 features coming in with some touch point at least to offline capabilities here. One is the possibility to automatic recovery of offline databases exceeding size limit. And the normal footprint here in a POS device, if you run store commerce locally, is that you run a SQL Express. You run a free, not licensed database, which has a capacity limit on the amount of gigabytes it can store. And it makes a lot of sense because it would be hugely costly to run licensed SQL servers out there in the wild if you have 200 or 300 stores. So everyone does it, and then everyone has the same possible issues if you have a lot of items and a lot of data. So this is a feature to kind of handle the issues that might occur when you hit that tipping point and it kind of goes over the edge. You might have problems with your offline DB, which is great. You also, on that note, there is another feature to allow index compression improvements for offline databases to keep it lean and keep it down and below that threshold limit. And another set of features for enhancing the monitoring of download sessions. A new network connection health chart that you can use to see connection history, connection types, Wi-Fi signal strength. So you can actually track and measure how your stores are connecting, really. And another nice one is the proactive toast notifications for offline reliability. So you would get toast notifications, just a pop-up basically, popping up and notifies the store employees when there's an offline authentication failure or it's a weak Wi-Fi or something happens on the network. It kind of informs them that you're on a weak connection here. Doesn't really help that poor user if they can't perform the sale, but at least then they know it's not a bug in the store commerce application or in your custom code. It's they need to go restart their switch in the back office or something. So a lot of nice little features and capabilities here to ensure that, because a lot of stores out there still demand offline capabilities. Not everyone is fully online all the time for a lot of reasons.
Yep. Yes. So I actually thought that I should step over to some of the wave release features since we are running a bit long. One of the things that was really cool now was that we have been talking a lot about, as I said before, dual write and even virtual tables. And one of the things that is coming in the wave release is actually offline support for virtual tables. So if you have a Power App that is using virtual tables to connect to F&O, per definition, those have always been online since they are actually based on OData. But what I think is done now is that there is a caching feature in Dataverse, meaning that you can actually access the virtual tables in the Power App without having it available.
Yeah, exactly. In your phone, if you have run the mobile Power Apps application, it will. I think it already does that for native Dataverse tables, right?
Yep.
The feature here adds that capability for virtual entities, which is really cool. So you can really build fancy stuff with near real time, unless it's offline, but it at least will be fast for you once the connection comes back up and synchronize.
Yep.
Super cool. But I mean, speaking of the release waves, there's a ton of things to lift here. So we'll have to be short on all the items. I just want to note one thing, Johan, if you remember the last time we did a release wave, we did the Control F Copilot in the document just to see how many times they mentioned Copilot in the release wave. Kind of an indicator of how much AI is driving things forward. And interesting thing to note here is in the release wave 2025, it's mentioned 335 times. In the last release wave 2024-2, it was mentioned 823 times. I'm not sure what that tells me. It's just a note I made just to realize that maybe there was more new stuff coming in the 2024 release wave, and now it's more improvements to those. Or maybe it's just that they didn't mention Copilot as much. I don't know. But one of the features that I noticed, and I think this is an indicator of where it's going at in many cases, is the central immersive homepage for AP clerk, accounts payable clerks. It's basically a page, right? But it contains an overall status of the autonomous invoice processing, how things are going with all your rules. It's a daily work summary. It's an AI-guided work list, like things you need to look at, invoices with exceptions, list of invoices. So it seems like the new improved workspace that we've been looking at in the release wave documentation and various insight reports. So it's basically it's an AI sprinkled workspace, and this seems to be like the driving for all the like workspaces and things where you can actually put something in the hands of a user, and it drives value because you get everything at the same time or at the same place. Really, it looks really cool.
Yes. One of the other cross-platform things that also coming is something that we will have a reason to get back to in a coming episode, where we actually talk to someone from Microsoft about this, and it has to do with asynchronous operation of dual write. So by definition, dual write is synchronous. You cannot save, for instance, a quote if it is being synced to CE and CE doesn't approve of the quote, because then you won't be able to press save. And the other way around is also true. If you go in and create a quote in CE and it's synced to F&O, and F&O thinks that you should have a quote name on this quote because otherwise I won't accept it, then you won't be able to save the quote. That won't be possible. It's synchronous. That's why it's called dual write, sort of. So what Microsoft is doing now is that they are enabling an asynchronous mode, which is striving for eventual consistency. I love that wording, eventual consistency. But the thing is that what will happen is that the transactions over dual write will be queued up for those entities where you have enabled asynchronous operation. Those are absolutely not all of them. The default pattern is still to use a synchronous pattern, but the asynchronous pattern is okay for, say, sales orders, for instance, quotes, because it also improves performance, because you don't have to wait for the transactions to have a round trip to F&O and get back to CE again.
No, exactly. That's really cool. We'll cover that more in detail in the coming episode. There's a lot of complicated stuff, really. The promise of consistency, eventual consistency models. It's really cool. And that also it enables a much better user interface. But the engineering team has a lot of complexity there that goes into that work. Cool. So my next one on the Wave documents is I'll take two at the same time because it's a lot of investment going into finance, not only from a Copilot and AI perspective. One feature I loved, I need to try it out. It's the Document Explorer workspace, because you have all of these, like every document is related to another. You have intercompany POS, so you have a lot of journals and vouchers connected to actual documents like origins and so forth. So it's a workspace where you can, with natural language, you can see end-to-end document relationships. So you can search for packing slips, sales orders, sales agreement, customer invoices, collection letters, payments, and so forth, using natural language to kind of guide you. And this is where I really see a lot of the natural language things coming into play, because you don't need to learn all the filtering and all the tracking and all the how the tables are related. You just need to understand how to prompt, right? How to ask Document Explorer workspace and to give you that detail. Then from there, you can actually click and drill down to your documents and get answers to your questions. So look forward to trying that one out. And on that note, another thing coming is the ability to view cross-company transactional data using Accounting Source Explorer. I know some people have been working with this, and it's, again, the user interface thing that you have to switch. A lot of companies out there have a multi-legal entity context for a million of reasons. So you have a lot of different companies doing maybe the same thing or maybe different things, but then you need to like reconcile that into holding companies. So this allows you to make that easier. So they've been looking at data, looking at ideas, and they kind of drive it down to minimize the amount of clicks that you have to do to get the answers that you need. So that's cool.
Yes, I would like to actually venture outside of the F&O sphere for a little while. And into Power Apps, because one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is how we should work with Power Apps in the F&O space. And we just mentioned the virtual tables that get offline support. But another thing that is coming is that we can actually choose columns for apps, for tables that are being downloaded to mobile devices. And that's, I think, is a really, really good thing when it comes to virtual tables in F&O, because F&O tends to have a lot of columns in their tables. I mean, they are not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of metadata tables. There are a lot of like rec IDs and stuff. And in some cases, we probably even won't need them in a mobile device if we are supposed to just, especially if we just have it to read data, then we don't need all of the data. We just need a fraction of the data. And that's a good thing, because now we can actually say these columns needs to be downloaded to the mobile device and these does not. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's the same as not doing select star when you're writing T-SQL statements. You should try to narrow the data that you need, because it's all sapping across a lot of stuff. So everything you can limit to what you need makes a lot of sense, not only for security but also for performance reasons. So
I think since what we are working with in Dataverse when it comes to F&O is basically entities. This probably means that we will get a simpler and simpler data model as well, and less lookups and stuff as well, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. We'll need to look into the details. I think the first step would be a simplified entity that doesn't have a lot of logic, and then you get more. The more you can use just regular data mapping, then you can really bump up that performance. But but you're right. Maybe driving to a little bit more simpler model in some of these cases to ensure performance.
Yep.
So my next one is another agent. So it's the era of agents. It's really cool. Let's see how these are actually enabled out there. But this is for the account reconciliation. Another workspace, another summary page. But you should really look into these things and enable them to see, because I hope people aren't like scared of enabling these things. Just turn them on and try them out, because they are filled with safeguards. And if you run it in a non-production environment first, you should be able to draw your conclusions. This particular one will help you out with reconciliation. It will find differences between subledger and general ledger, provide you options with how to resolve the issue. And eventually, again, this is the agent part then, where you can actually resolve the issue on behalf of the user. So you can allow your agent, once you trust it, to help you out and not like create bottlenecks. So all of these agents that are coming, some are applicable for you, some aren't. There is also the, which is a very demo-friendly one. Have you seen that one? The supplier agent, supplier communications agent, procure to pay tasks, where it can kind of analyze and find discrepancies in POs where a supplier might have changed the planned delivery date, or there's been some update. This agent will kind of fire off and provide you with you can change these items, perhaps you can do this. It's a super demo friendly scenario because it looks really cool. But it's definitely worth looking into because it can scan your email if you want to allow it. You can check for incoming emails. You can help out with contacting the suppliers and maybe place extra orders. So it's another agent that can really help out with that supplier communication and identifying shortages and updating things. So a lot of agents coming. Try them out. At least it's worth enabling them. Or someone finds a nice little YouTube video of them and asks why you haven't enabled them.
Yeah, exactly. And I, as I said, I mean, if there was one thing you should bring from the release notes for the Wave release, it's absolutely AI and Copilot again. And also, I would say that now is actually the time when AI is actually coming for real, because we've had the AI sidecar for a while, and when it was released, it was actually not that useful, especially not if you are going to use it as a process enhancement for F&O, as a helper to tell you how to do things. It's fantastic, but using it for F&O data and for context and so on is not really a big thing. One of the things that's actually coming now, I don't know if you have brought this up on your list as well, is ongoing conversations with Copilot. So not only does it use context for when you discuss with it, it can actually see the data, but it can also sort of keep the conversation going. So you don't have to refer back to the data again, which is really good.
No, that's really cool. I think they're also adding features for allowing Copilot to access that data in Dataverse using virtual entities, and you can really build knowledge to your Copilot. So it's absolutely, even though it's mentioned less in the document, I think that just means that there is a lot of effort going into maturing these things as they come. Because as you said, it's a lot of it's in the beginning at least, it was a lot of summaries and Copilots or sidecars. That it looked promising, but now you can actually leverage a lot of knowledge there, and you can actually use it when used right.
I think they've done search and replace on half of the Copilot words in the release notes with agents instead.
Maybe you're right. I should do that search and maybe summarize those two to get a real index right.
Because I'm guessing in the previous release notes there weren't that many agents.
You are right. I think this is absolutely, if 2024 was the era of Copilot, then now this is the era of the Copilot agent. Definitely.
Yes.
I think so too. I'm going to invest some time as well to looking into, because it's really, again, back to the intelligent autonomous ERP thing. It makes sense where you can make it make sense, if you get what I mean. There are areas where this maybe might not be applicable, but there are absolutely areas where a lot of users do repetitive tasks. They do the same thing every day. It's just because they've done it, right? So this way you can maybe highlight those things.
Yes.
Going off the Copilot area, I mean, it's interesting to see there's a lot of coming in Globalization Studio and e-invoicing, all of these solutions. It's coming. A lot of things are coming there. And it's interesting to note, I try to stay up to date with these things as much as possible. But it's always kind of following the regulatory demands, right? So a country decides on legal reasons that we need to implement e-invoice, and then of course they don't implement it overnight. You get 2 years. So in 2 years' time, everyone in this country needs to be compliant with this and this and this specific e-invoice story or new document, VAT reporting or whatever. So you have this kind of time frame of 2 years. Normally, 2 years is just a figure, but you have at least a time frame where you can make this work. And Microsoft is trying to stay up to date. Poland is one is mentioned in the release wave. They're making it mandatory during 2026 to have electronic invoicing. So it's covered there. So you need to use electronic invoicing if that fits your demands. Otherwise, you need to find another solution working with e-invoicing. So apart from just technical, nice, fancy features, it's also actually staying so you don't break the law. But sometimes these regulatory things aren't mentioned in the release waves. You need to stay up to date with what's coming as part of legislator in your country.
Yep. Yeah. So my final one is actually one that I picked partly because I think it was a good one, but also because it had the most fantastic headline: Achieving regulatory compliance and quality excellence.
Yeah.
It's a supply chain feature which has to do with quality testing of delivered goods, of course. So doing like random checks and verifying quality of what you have gotten delivered and so on, and especially getting system support for those testing, to reporting those testing back and stuff. So I really like that, and also quality excellence. Who doesn't want quality excellence?
Exactly. Everyone should strive for quality excellence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think we're running out of time, but I have one final one. And there is a lot of stuff that we skipped now for the wave release. We'll come back to those in the coming like regular version updates, of course. So we'll cover those as well. But there's just too much in the release wave documentation. But one I liked a little bit, it ties back to my offline POS work here. There's a new feature coming for health check features. Like in store commerce, you can check, is everything up? But you basically just get a button. Yeah, you're okay. Now it will surface a lot more like network health checks. So you will see information from the network information API and platform specific API. So you'll see CSU processing times. You'll see like more in the health check, and some retry logic is implemented as well for failed CSU requests. So it can retry again if it fails to connect. So a lot of work seems to go into those specific store commerce scenarios where you're kind of on your edge here with your store commerce, and if it fails, it can retry, but at least it will give you some more insights instead of just a green or red button or green or red icon. So I think that makes a lot of sense to improve.
Yes.
All right. This was a doozy, a long one.
Yep, absolutely. But as I said before, we have a couple of interviews lined up, so we will be releasing those further on. But for now, we will say thank you and goodbye. Have a nice time. Till the next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.